Hello, everyone. Good to see you this afternoon. Welcome back, and welcome to the final episode of what was our first Masterclass series. Just give everyone a second to get logged in. I can see the attendees dripping in. But yeah, this Masterclass series. So we started this back in January. 6 episodes on how to build an AutoQA program that um, actually delivers value. So if you've been here since the beginning, thank you. It's been a journey. If you're joining for the first time, hello, welcome. My name is Chris Mounce. I'm the product training and enablement specialist here at evaluagent. So if this is your first time, you're in the right place. So some introductions. Here's me, we know me. And also in the background, making sure everything is running smoothly, we've got Vicky. And of course, you guys, the evaluagent user community. So just as we always do, let us know in the chat. Give us a hello. Let us know your name, where you're from, and how many sessions you've made it to during this season. So yeah, Vicky, if you want to come in and just do your usual of reminding us of the house rules. It's all so formal.
Chris, thanks for having me. So I'm Vicky. I live backstage, and as Chris said, I kind of make sure everything's technically running okay. So if you do run into any problems, or if you find Chris's audio or something's gone funny, or you can't see something on the
Don't jinx it.
slides,
Don't jinx it.
like, I know. Like, everything will be smooth. Nothing will fall over because of the UK heat wave. Everything will be fine. But if you do see anything, or you need any help, you can always DM me backstage, or just pop it in the chat and just say like, oh, having some issues or whatever, and we'll do our best to make sure that we get all back on track. And questions, we'd love to have your questions and your feedback throughout. So I'll be popping chat prompts in while Chris is talking. Make sure that you're replying to those, and if you've got any other kind of additions or elaborations you want to add, then by all means, like, this is a very open session. We'd love for you to contribute. Questions, Chris is very good at picking them up as we go along, but there's a lot to get through. So we normally take questions at the end. If Chris hasn't got to your question, rest assured I'll be back later and I will make sure that we get your question answered. I think that just about covers it, Chris.
See, I definitely get it easy, but to be fair, I just go on here and talk.
I'm so pleased we've got lots of participants in today and the chat is popping already. So I think I'm going to disappear. I will be back later with just a couple of asks and we'll round up the session as well. And I'll ask you some questions, Chris. But for now, I'll let you crack on with our final AutoQA masterclass of summer. So I'll see you
All right.
later.
Thanks, Vicky. Before we get into it, let's just talk over where we've been, the journey so far. Back at the beginning in January, that was the foundations. So the structural decisions that determine what your data can tell you later on. Um, Episode 2, that was decision. So how to design automated line items that actually measure what you intend. The third one, bang smack in the middle, that was orchestration. So work queues, automation maturity, and really, I guess, operating the system deliberately. Episode 4, that was reading the data, the signals. So moving from goals to decisions and from individual patterns to program level intelligence. Last time, this list is getting longer and longer each time I've done this. But last time it was about the human layer, so where that human judgment shows up. So review loops, calibration, and turning the data into coaching conversations that are effective. So by this point, we've built the program, we've designed it, we've measured it, we've operated it, we've read the signals, we've kept the humans in the loop. So today's question is one that everything else has kind of been leading towards. How do you know it's working and how do you keep it getting better? Now, firstly, proven impact starts with having trust in your data. And if you're going to make a case to a stakeholder, whether it's an ops director, your CFO, really anyone that's asking, is it worth it? Now, the first thing that they will want to know is, whether the numbers are reliable. So that's where we start. The metrics that tell you the program itself is healthy. So there's four that I would focus on. The first one, this is the SmartScore accuracy report. Now this tile here that's highlighted in red, that's the percentage of AI generated scores that your evaluators haven't changed. So that's essentially your confidence indicator. If your accuracy is high, then your automation is reliable. And your evaluators, they're confirming that through those validation processes. Now, if it's dropping, then it's something upstream that needs attention. So it may be a line item, prompt needs refining, or a criteria needs a little tightening. So this is the SmartScore accuracy report. Let me show you where we find that in the platform. So let's come to this little guy here. I'm going to come to my reporting menu. And in here, I have the SmartScore report. So based on the date range that we're looking at just now, we can see the number of line items that's being smart scored, and then we can see the number that's being changed by evaluators. Now, in comparison to the number of line items we've scored, for smart score accuracy is pretty much 100%. It's been rounded up in this case. If there's any eagle-eyed viewers that wonder why that's 100%, that's the reason. This lets us know about any changes that's been made by evaluators. Now, the real power here to understand how line items are performing and to identify any trends, we can use the filters. There's a couple of things we get here. We can filter by our evaluators, so we can understand if there are evaluators that are overriding AI scores, perhaps excessively. And then the other side of the coin, we might have evaluators that are not doing it enough. So the evaluator filter there lets us understand that. But we can also focus on particular line items. So if we've identified a trend, we can see how often that is shown up. So we can see, and again, this is demo data, so we've not got a huge amount. We can see for all of those line items scored, we can see the number that's being changed. Now imagine that with higher numbers, we can see this smart score accuracy, this confidence indicator is pretty low. So what we do from here, that issue's then upstream. We take this line item and we come into our Manage Topics screen. This is where all of our line items live. And we can see this little guy here. Now at this point, now of course we can view it directly from here, and that will show us all of the criteria that we have set up on this line item. If we decide that we want to make changes, we can come into the little burger menu and duplicate. Now we get two options here. We can either create a brand new line item, or we can just create the next version of this current line item. That's what we'll do. And this new version, this draft version, pops in where we can make any changes as we need. Now, once we've made those changes, we add in some revision notes, and we can save those changes from there. Now, at this point, the line item still shows as being active. That's the current version. So when we drop it down, we can see that little draft version. This is version 2, and we can see our change comments. We can then take that into the testing console. So we can test the accuracy, make sure that we're getting the results that we're expecting. Once we're happy, we can come in here and activate it. Now, what's cool here is if this line item is already being used in a scorecard, this new line item, this updated version, is automatically applied to that scorecard. Obviously from any conversations that are being scored from now, but it's that new version that we'll be using against it. So really here, your change report, that SmartScore accuracy report, that diagnoses the issue. The fix is in the line item design that we saw here. The stuff that we were talking about in episode 2, back when we were creating those line items. Let me just come back to the slide deck. Now, the next thing we need to look at is the calibration rates, the calibration performance report. Now, this is based on all of the calibration sessions that are being held in the business. We can see how those evaluators have performed in this report. Now, this is essentially how your evaluators are scoring against the agreed standard. Now, this column here that's highlighted, this is your average outcome difference. Now, a zeroed average outcome, like what we see here, that indicates that these evaluators are completely aligned. There is no difference from what the agreed standard is during those calibration sessions. Now, where there's variation in calibration levels, like we see here, that means that any overrides that you're getting from your automated line items from evaluators could be just noise into your override data. And that means that if we're then drawing conclusions from that, we're kind of on shaky ground. So zero is aligned. Negative scoring, what we see here, that indicates where scoring is too hard. And the positive elements shows that scores are being too lenient. Oops. So essentially, that's your cue with this report. That's your cue to revisit criteria on a line item that's in a scorecard, or run a focused calibration session. Because although this might be indicating that evaluators are not agreeing with the AI result, if your prompt is sound and you're happy with that, the next element is ensuring that these guys are calibrated through those sessions. So essentially the same report as to what we saw last time in the last episode, but this time we're reading it as a program health indicator. The next one is the evaluation progress, making sure that you're getting coverage in all of your evaluations. So your auto work queue page, this is the work queue progress report, and this lets you see what percentage of conversations are being evaluated through those work queues. Now, AutoQA, as you guys know, it gives you the ability to score everything. Now, if your coverage is patchy, then we're making decisions on incomplete data. Now, it doesn't mean, though, that you need 100% on every scorecard, but you need to know what you're covering and why. So let me show you the work queue progress report where it lives. So I'm going to come back to, let's see, yeah, this little guy here, actually, no. I'm going to come to our auto work queues. So when you come into this page, this is where you'll see all of your automated work queues that are live. So for every type of filter and your imported contacts that are plugged in here, you can see what's being scored. Now, up at the top right, this is where we can check the progress of all of those work queues. Now, it tells us a few things. Now, for each of these live work queues, we can see what the original quota is. This little indication here, that little infinity logo, that lets you know that that is a work queue that is fully automated. Now, where you see the numerical values, this is letting us know that this is a work queue that sends evaluations to evaluators to score and validate any AI results. Now, that being said, we can then check the quota, what's the percentage being filled so far, and from all of those, what's been evaluated, what's remaining to evaluate, so we can see how those work queues are getting on. We can click into these as well. Let's check this high risk one, and that takes us into the next level, where we can see how each of those evaluators that are assigned in that work queue, we can see their individual workloads as well. So essentially, if your completion rates here are low, or you're not covering all of your agents, this is the signal to adjust the quotas just by coming into our work queues and editing here. We can change the template, including all the kind of quota settings in there, or adjust the template configuration through the publication. So let me just come back here and back to slide deck. This feels pretty seamless switching to these different screens. I'm always worried about it. So the other element is coaching frequency. So this is your one-to-one records and actions report. This is all of your coaching sessions, all of your one-to-ones, any type of meeting that you're holding in your business. So this is essentially telling you how often the data is actually reaching the agents via a structured conversation. Like you can have perfect scores and perfect calibration, but if no one's having a conversation about it, then the data's not really doing anything. Now, what we see in this report, we're looking at team view just now, so there's various views where you can look at this data, but this is telling us by team, and we can see how many sessions are currently in progress, and then we can see those that have been submitted. Now, what submitted means is that once we get to the end of the one-to-one, had that coaching conversation, we've agreed objectives, etc., we then send that one-to-one to the agent or the participant, but we send that to the participant to acknowledge and provide feedback. Once that's been done, that then moves from the submitted section into a completed state. In the topic section here, that lets you visually see the different types of one-to-ones that have been carried out. So those four give you a picture of your program health. So SmartScore reporting, your calibration performance, your work queues, and your one-to-ones, your records and actions. Now, a question for you guys. Based on what you see here, which one of these is the hardest to get right? So as I was saying, these four, these are the kind of main four to check for your program health. This tells you if the data is reliable, humans are calibrated, if the coverage is there, and the output is reaching the people. Now, that's the foundation. And once you trust that, you can then start connecting it to the outcomes. Those metrics tell us that a program is healthy, but they don't prove that it's valuable. Like you can have 95% smart score accuracy, you can have strong calibration, full coverage, regular coaching, but you're still not able to answer the question that your stakeholder is actually asking. Is this changing anything for the customer? Now, QA data, that tells you how the agents are performing against your standards. But what it doesn't tell you on its own is whether it's making a difference. So customer satisfaction, retention, repeat contacts, effort, that data lives somewhere else. And most teams can tell you that QA is helping, but they just can't show you exactly where. And that's the gap. And closing it is how you move from the program is running well to the program is delivering value. So how do you close that gap? Well, you start with what you've already got. Now, you've probably got access to CSAT or NPS scores, even if it's from post-interaction surveys, and you've got handling times, things like that from your WFM or your CCAS platform. None of that lives inside evaluagent, but it doesn't need to. So this exercise is about putting your QA data next to those numbers and then looking for direction. And all of the data can get exported out of the platform. But let's look at exporting our data. So I'm going to come back to the platform and let's come to this one. So when we go into the reports, now every report has an option to export the data. So depending on what view we've got here, we've got an export button and we can take that out as a CSV. There are some other options in there as well. You'll find that in every report. The other option is using the exporter function. Now, when you come in here, it's under reporting. When you come in here, you've got various tabs where you can select your evaluation data, your one-to-one data, any analytics. You can even export your audit log and understand who's logging into the platform, what activities are taking place directly from that raw data. So it's just a case for each of the section, you apply your filters. So what's the date range? We set some filtering options and then start that export. And the history of those shows in the table here, and we can download previous versions. Now, alternatively, you can automate this. So if we come to our integrations option, we can come into API and we simply create an API key, and that can automate that process and get it into other platforms, Power BI, Tableau, etc. But either way, the data is yours to work with. Now, let me give you an example of how that data comparison works. So let's say we've been coaching a group of agents on first contact resolution, and the line items they're improving, scores are going up. But now if we pull the repeat contact rate for the same group over the same period, is that moving? Now, if it is, then you've got a directional story. Now, it's not conclusive proof that QA caused that, but it's a credible evidence-based case that the program is contributing to an outcome that the business actually cares about. And before and after comparisons work in the same way. So what did the numbers look like before you launched the scorecard? What did they look like now? Isolate that variable as best as you can. And granted, it's not going to be perfect, and that's fine. I mean, stakeholders, they don't need a peer-reviewed study. They just need like a clear trend and a credible explanation. And that's what you can do today. Now, you want that picture across every conversation other than a sample. That's where conversation intelligence comes in. Now, most of these business metrics that I mentioned, so CSAT, NPS, as we know, they come from surveys. And surveys maybe give you like a 5% percentage of the picture. And the customers that respond, they are in the extremes. So they're either very happy or they're very unhappy. And those guys in the middle, they're invisible. So conversation intelligence changes that. It reads every conversation and predicts the metrics that you would normally get from a survey. So NPS, CSAT, customer effort. And it does that by looking at what was actually said. So it picks up whether the issue was resolved, whether the customer has called about this before, how the sentiment is shifted through the conversation. And it does that across 100% of the conversations, not the 5% that fill in the survey, all of them. Let me show you how the conversation intelligence works. So I'm coming into the imported contacts and filters, and you guys will know this page. This is the repository of all of your conversations. It's your library. Now, conversation intelligence applies additional metrics and visualizations to this, because what we get is the reason that the customer got in touch. So that's automated and that's read by the platform, the intention, the customer's intention, and then we can see those predictive metrics. So what's a detractor? What's been resolved? Are there any vulnerability indicators? Is it a repeat? And then we can see like the thumbs up or the thumbs down. We can see what's a positive conversation and what's a negative one. And then we can see the CSAT and the customer effort score in there as well, all automatically generated by the platform. Now let's take a look at our conversation. So I'm just going to quickly find where our lowest reason for contact is in terms of NPS. So I'm applying a filter here to look at the reasons for contact. And I'm just going to filter that to see what the lowest score is. So there we go, -33, processing delays. So I'm going to click into here, and that will then show me all of those conversations that come under that category. So let's just grab this little guy here. And this is a screen that you'll see, actually there's no evaluation on there, so let's come back. Now, just as a pro tip, when you come into the imported contacts table, this little icon here lets you know that the conversation's been evaluated. Where it doesn't have it, it's obviously not been evaluated. And that was why we didn't see a scorecard in there. So this little guy, that's the detractor, that's been evaluated. So let's view that. So yeah, so same screen as we saw before. We've got the transcript of the conversation. We'll get the scorecard. On the left-hand side is where we see all of those conversation intelligence elements. So we see the reasons for contact, the intention. We can see a summary of the conversation. We can also see insight topics. Now, insight topics, they are kind of similar to automated line items. You can look for keywords and phrases. You can look for more nuanced things through Gen AI prompts, where line items score the element, the insight topic just looks for its presence. So as an example, this conversation relates to wait time complaints. So it's looking for those keywords. When it finds it in the conversation, it tags it. Another really good use case is looking for agents that are perhaps giving financial advice to customers. That's something that could be a compliance risk. So using an insight topic that allows you to find those, tag them, and then you can report on them and understand more, find those easily. You can even be alerted. So when it's detected, you get a little ping to say there's a financial advice conversation that's just happened using the alerts. We can see the sentiment, and that's covered over three things. So the overall sentiment, then from the agent side, and then from the customer side. And then all of those predictive metrics. So expected NPS, repeats, is a vulnerability, is a resolution. And what you'll notice is that for every decision the platform makes in terms of those AI decisions, there's always going to be a reason for that decision being made. In the same way as we see it for the line items, we can see the reason and those improvement actions. Every decision in an evaluagent that's been made by the AI, you see those reasons in there. Now this gives you two lenses. So QA tells you how the agent performed against your standards, and conversation intelligence tells you how the customer actually experienced that conversation. Now, when both of those are moving in the right direction, then that's your impact story. When they're not aligned, like an agent is scoring well, but the customer sentiment is dropping, that's a signal that something in your standards needs revisiting. Now, for you guys that have got conversation intelligence today, then this is something practical that you can get going with immediately. For those that don't, those survey responses, they still work. It's just a narrower view. Conversation intelligence widens that. Now, let me ask you guys a question for the chat, because there's a very talkative, so let me get another question out there. What's the question that you dread getting asked about in relation to your QA program? Vicky will just drop that in the chat and let me show you. So yeah, so a couple of examples, like what's the return on investment? Can we just let AI do it all? How do we know this is working? Why are scores high, but nothing's changed? Anything like that. What's the question that you dread? Of course, we're talking about who are we going to tell about this data that we've connected to outcomes? Because when we think about it, the same data lands differently depending on who's sitting across the table. And the mistake isn't having the wrong numbers. I guess it's presenting them in the wrong language. Like a QA manager here, this little blue guy, he thinks in program health, so SmartScore accuracy, calibration results, evaluation coverage. That's what they're worrying about. They want to know that the engine is running well. An ops director, this red guy here, he thinks in operational outcomes, are handling times improving? Are customers calling back for the same issue? Is quality consistent across teams, or is there pockets that need attention? They don't need to know the calibration rate. They need to know what's changing on the floor. A CFO, this teal guy, this blue guy, he thinks in cost and return. What does the program cost to run, and what's it saving? If you can show that quality improvements are reducing cost per interaction, lowering attrition, and the program is paying for itself, then that's a conversation, of course, they'll understand. But the data behind all of these conversations, that's the same. It's just the framing that's different. I think one thing to keep in mind, you're showing direction. You're not claiming like a controlled experiment. It's here's what's changed, here's what we changed, and here's how the numbers moved. And this is a trend. And a real advantage, because I think a stakeholder will certainly respect it more than just a clean casual claim that they can then pick apart. And when the trend is clear and the story is consistent, that directional evidence is more than enough. Now, what about when something tells you that something needs to change? Now, earlier we looked at those four metrics that tells us if the program is healthy. Now, these same metrics also tell us where to look if something is off. So AI accuracy is dropping, then that's a line item design conversation. Is calibration off, then that's a trust in your overrides conversation. If your coverage is falling behind, that's a work queue thing. Your one-to-one records and actions, your coaching conversations, that's a development conversation. I think there's one more scenario here that's worth calling out, and it's a scorecard that used to be useful, but it's not really driving any change. If you think about scores being consistently high, then coaching conversations around it probably dried up, and the business outcomes that these scorecards were meant to influence, they're not moving anymore. So it becomes a relevance problem. And realistically, it's the easiest one to miss because if you're seeing all of these scorecards, if you're getting that 100% pass rate on all of your scorecards, um, it makes it look on the surface it looks fine. It makes it look as if everything's fine. And it could be either, agents have genuinely mastered these behaviors, in which case the scorecard's done its job and it might need retiring or evolving. Or the criteria within the scorecard, it's too easy, and the scorecard is measuring more compliance than quality. So your options, retire it, raise the bar, replace the line items with more challenging ones. Flatline scores are a signal as well. It's not an automatic success story. Um, but the discipline, of course, is checking them on a regular basis rather than waiting for something to break. Now, before we wrap up, I want to just take a step back from this just for a second, because one of the best indicators of how your program is doing is the questions that you're asking about it. Now, early on, the questions that you're asking and the questions that you're thinking about, they're the mechanical. Is the AI scoring accurately? Are evaluators, are they accepting the scores? Is the data flowing? Really, you're checking that the engine starts. And then the questions shift. So it becomes, are evaluators aligned? Is calibration holding? Are we covering what we need to cover? That's operational. So really, you're checking that the engine runs reliably. And then they shift again. So it becomes about, is agent behavior changing? Are coaching conversations actually landing? Is the data driving development, or are we just generating reports? So that's where the program starts delivering value rather than just producing data. And then you get to the questions that we've been asking today. Is this moving business outcomes? Can I prove it to a stakeholder? Is the program earning its place? Now, of course, you don't stop asking the earlier questions. You still check accuracy, you still run calibration, but the center of gravity shifts a little because early on, the accuracy takes most of your attention. But a year in, it's like a quick check, and you're spending your time on impact and outcomes. And if you're sitting here asking these questions, then your program is further on than you might think. And if you're still in the early stages, now you know what's ahead. So, guys, that's everything for today. That's been great. Any questions? Then now's the time to drop those in. I think Vicky's gonna come back in and kind of wind us up here. Hi, Vicky. There's loads of good questions there, wasn't it? I totally forgot about it.
Amazing. Absolutely. I think that's probably some of the most questions that we've had in one of our masterclasses. And
Yeah,
so interesting that a lot of them were on AI and trust. And although like people recognize you can't possibly manually evaluate every conversation, there's still this absolute need for human oversight into these conversations as well. So thank you, gang.
yeah.
I did have a little chuckle backstage that the biggest response was to questions we dread being asked or things like that, because we all have them, don't we, in our jobs. So
Yeah,
thank you for
yeah,
being so candid,
yeah. I
everyone,
had it
for
just before
coming
this
forward.
question.
Yes. Exactly, exactly. Chris, I have a question for you as well. I was
Yeah.
curious. You talked about those four kind of reports up front on program health. You asked everyone, which do you think are the most difficult to get right? And obviously Daniel came back and told us about auto work queues. But from your time in contact centers, like what did you find most difficult? Which ones were challenging to get right?
A great question. And, it's there's one that comes to mind immediately, and it's calibration. Because it's much easier to tell an AI model how to change and what to measure rather than 10 people that's in a calibration room and they've all scored differently. I think that's and it's interesting, that's the human factor. Um, and the thing is, I completely get it because people will be harsh when they're evaluating conversations. And one could say that's harsh, one could say that they have high standards. And then we'll get the other side of the coin where there's leniency, where it's not about marking everything, it's a journey on highlighting things over time and getting those marginal gains. So there's pros and cons to both. That's what makes the conversation challenging at times when it comes to calibration because you're trying to bring everyone to the level, and there's nothing more varied than humans, I guess. Humans, and it always feels weird saying that, when we talk about humans
Yeah,
and bots now, but we're in the
and
minority.
distinguish ourselves from our future robot overlords. Daniel has come in with a question. So I asked the chat any questions for Chris on optimization and improving your QA program. And he has said, perhaps a bit left field, with smart score analysis, if a line item result is changed, does this drive improvement in the AI language model? Or is it a tool just for QA to refine the line item?
A great question, and it's when a line item goes into the SmartScore report, it starts off a workflow where you, as the prompt designer, the admin, would take any actions from that and improve the prompts from there. We've deliberately kept that as a human in the loop process because if you think about it, if we automated that learning process very quickly, um, what would the word be? Very quickly, any changes that perhaps not are not effective, they scale up immediately. So we keep that human element where you're in total control. You decide how the prompts change and when. So great question, Daniel.
Um, I think, unless anyone's got any other questions, I will just do the end of session preamble. And if we do get any last minute questions, that's fine. We will definitely pick those up. But I just wanted to thank, first of all, Chris for delivering a tour de force and closure to our AutoQA Masterclass series. So thank you for that. I will just call out we have got the quarterly product showcase next Tuesday. So if you're excited to see more of the evaluagent roadmap, we do have a very exciting feature release coming up that we'll be talking about, which is AI coaching. And Chris, you touched on coaching a little bit today, so I would love to see some of our attendees here today join that on
Yeah,
Tuesday.
really exciting. I've always been through my coaching background, the agent development part has always been the part that I felt was most important. And whilst I've got all of the automation and the AI that's generating all of the data, that's great. But seeing that AI augmentation for coaching workflows, that is, and we throw this word around a lot, but it is a game changer when it comes to
Yeah,
coaching people. It's a game changer, man.
absolutely. But don't fret, everybody. That will come in the email that follows this session. And also, hopefully, you should get a little survey prompt at the end of this session, either in your browser or via email. If you have some time and would love to share your thoughts, then please do let us know when we're planning future webinars. We always take into account any feedback that you have. So, anything on pace, anything on the subject matter, anything you'd like us to dive into in more detail, all of that stuff is all in the survey. So we'd love you to take literally 2 minutes to fill that
Oh,
in if you've
yeah,
got some
absolutely.
thought.
It always helps. It helps me sleep tonight. But the other thing that's worth mentioning, Vicky, is the summer webinar series that we're planning. Because starting off from next month, we're looking at new topics and more voices. So it's not just going to be me talking at you guys. We'll hear from other experts, and I guess in the business and across the industry. It's still very much we're planning it right now, but it's super exciting.
Exciting. And rest assured, being a summer webinar series, we know lots of you will be on holiday and all sorts of things. Those will be
We're not.
recorded. And we're not on holiday. We are bringing you the good stuff. 30 minutes, short summer sessions, drop in and see what we've got for you. But we are planning that right now. I'm very excited to run that through the summer months for those of us who aren't on holiday for 6 weeks or so. So, if I may, so big picture, we find ourselves in a situation where we know intuitively that a set of agents provide stronger client care, but data never seems to show it. We're struggling with how to approach this. Have tried iterating scorecards. Any suggestions on how to approach that, Chris?
I think the way that I would approach it is using the kind of iterative scorecards, we can get that word out. I think that approach is quite interesting because one way that you could approach it is have your level one scoring, if you like, your initial scoring that's running through an auto work queue. So that's doing all of the scoring based on whatever that scorecard is measuring. Now, for those particular people that are intuitively providing that stronger client care, stick those guys in another work queue where based on those results they get, it can trigger another scorecard. So that could be really diving deeper into particular elements. And it's a really good developmental approach because level one, you're great, you're achieving this level of care and this level of score. Then you get scored by level two. And the idea being is that because it's a harder scorecard, you're getting insights that you can then take into coaching. So then it's another achievement when those are met. And those gains feed into that wider quality scores. New scorecards, harder scorecards, plugged into work queues to pick out those agents. Please feel free to reach out to your customer success manager because if we can get those things answered, we can show you how to do it. Just reach out to those guys. I think that's worth saying, Vicky, just so that it's not just us.
Absolutely. And we do take feedback from these sessions as well. So kind of if you guys are kind of surfacing questions and stuff, like we'll also bridge that gap backstage and kind of let them know that there might be conversations that you guys might like to have. So yeah, always, they're always there, like lean on them as a resource. And we'll also, do some of the work for you in the background as well. I think we've actually finished a little bit ahead of time. Thank you everyone very much for joining us. Do look out for those summer webinar series coming up. And yeah, I'd love to see you on next week's
Yeah,
showcase
thanks
as
for
well.
joining, guys. It's been excellent. Hope you guys have got real value from it. That's why we do it.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks, gang, and we'll hopefully see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone.